June 6, 1944. The Normandy coast of occupied France. At approximately 0530 hours, German artillery officer Oberleutnant Klaus Richter of the 352nd Infantry Division observed through binoculars what would become the largest amphibious invasion in military history. His reports of thousands of Auschwitz vessels were initially dismissed by German command as impossible given weather conditions. This single moment of disbelief would prove catastrophic for German defensive operations. The importance of this perspective cannot be overstated. While Allied accounts of D-Day dominate historical narratives, understanding the German viewpoint reveals how industrial capacity, not just military tactics, determined the outcome of World War II in Western Europe. If you appreciate evidence-based World War II history told through primary sources and declassified military records, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from today. To understand what Oberleutnant Richter witnessed that morning, we must first examine the German defensive system he served within. The Atlantic Wall represented Nazi Germany's most ambitious coastal fortification project. Initiated by Führer Directive 40 in March 1942, this defensive line was intended to stretch from Norway's North Cape to the Spanish border, a distance exceeding 2,400 miles. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, Commander-in-Chief West, oversaw the Atlantic Wall's construction. However, resources proved inadequate for the project's scope. By spring 1944, the organization TOT, Nazi Germany's civil and military engineering group, had constructed approximately 15,000 permanent fortifications along the French coastline. This figure sounds impressive until one considers the distances involved. Many sectors possessed only minimal defenses, perhaps a concrete bunker every mile or two, with large gaps between fortified positions. German military doctrine for coastal defense had evolved from experiences in North Africa and Italy. The theory emphasized defeating invasions at the waterline, preventing enemy forces from establishing beachheads. Once Allied troops secured a foothold and began landing heavy equipment, the defenders would face insurmountable logistical disadvantages. German planners understood this vulnerability intimately. The 352nd Infantry Division, to which Richter belonged, had been positioned along the Normandy coast only in March 1944. This unit comprised a mix of combat veterans from the Eastern Front and younger conscripts with limited experience. Division strength numbered approximately 12,000 men, adequate for garrison duties, but stretched thin across miles of coastline. Richter himself represented the typical German officer of this period. Born in 1912, he had entered military service in the mid-1930s during Germany's rearmament phase. His artillery training emphasized the technical aspects of gunnery ballistics calculations, range finding, and fire coordination. By 1944, after service on the Eastern Front, he possessed considerable combat experience. Yet even veterans like Richter could not have anticipated what approached across the English Channel. The artillery battery under Richter's command consisted of several 10.5 centimeters and 15 centimeters guns, positioned in concrete casemates approximately 3 miles inland from what Allied planners designated as Omaha Beach. These weapons could range targets 12 miles out to sea when conditions permitted. From his observation post, a reinforced concrete structure built into the coastal bluffs, Richter maintained visual surveillance of the channel approaches. German intelligence operations regarding Allied invasion planning had been extensive but ultimately flawed. The Fremdheer West, or Foreign Armies West Intelligence Section, operated under Colonel Alexis Baron von Rohen. Throughout late 1943 and early 1944, this organization attempted to predict where and when the Western Allies would launch their anticipated invasion. Several factors complicated German intelligence assessments. First, Allied air superiority over France made aerial reconnaissance increasingly dangerous and unproductive. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flights over southern England, had been severely curtailed by late 1943. Second, British counterintelligence operations had successfully compromised or neutralized most German spy networks in the United Kingdom. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, possessed virtually no reliable human intelligence sources in Britain by 1944. Into this intelligence vacuum stepped Operation Fortitude, the Allied strategic deception plan. This operation comprised two main components: Fortitude North, suggesting an invasion of Norway, and Fortitude South, indicating the main assault would target the Pas-de-Calais region. The Pas-de-Calais represented the narrowest point of the English Channel, only 21 miles from Dover to Calais. German planners considered it the logical invasion site. Fortitude South employed an elaborate scheme. The Allies created the fictional 1st United States Army Group, supposedly commanded by General George Patton and concentrated in southeastern England, opposite the Pas-de-Calais. This phantom army consisted of inflatable tanks, dummy landing craft, false radio traffic, and controlled leaks through double agents working for British intelligence. The deception succeeded brilliantly. German intelligence estimated Allied strength in Britain at 55 to 60 divisions by May 1944. Actual strength numbered approximately 37 divisions. More critically, German planners remained convinced the main invasion would strike the Pas-de-Calais, with Normandy serving merely as a diversionary attack. This miscalculation concentrated Germany's strongest forces in the wrong location. The 15th Army, Germany's most powerful force in France, defended the Pas-de-Calais sector with approximately 380,000 troops. Meanwhile, the 7th Army, responsible for Normandy and Brittany, numbered only 170,000 men spread across a vast area. This force distribution would prove disastrous when Allied forces actually landed in Normandy. Weather conditions added another critical variable to defensive planning. The German Meteorological Service, operating from limited data after losing access to Atlantic weather stations, predicted that rough seas and strong winds would prevent any invasion attempt for several days after June 5th. This forecast appeared reasonable based on available information. A significant storm had indeed moved through the channel on June 5th, creating waves up to 6 feet high and winds exceeding 20 miles per hour. Many German commanders, reassured by the weather forecast, relaxed their alert status. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, appointed by Hitler to improve Atlantic Wall defenses in late 1943, traveled to Germany on June 5th to celebrate his wife's birthday. He planned to continue to Berlin afterward to press Hitler for additional resources. Rommel's absence on June 6th would delay German command decisions during critical hours. While German defenders maintained routine watches, the largest naval armada in history approached the Normandy coast through darkness and rough seas. Operation Neptune, the naval component of Operation Overlord, had been years in planning and months in execution. The Allied naval forces comprised vessels from 8 nations: the United States, Great Britain, Canada, France, Poland, Norway, the Netherlands, and Greece. The British Royal Navy provided the majority of warships, while American vessels dominated transport and landing craft numbers. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight Eisenhower had placed British Admiral Sir Bertram Ramsay in command of all naval forces. Official records document 6,939 vessels participating in Neptune, though definitions of what constituted a discrete vessel vary among sources. This total included -7 battleships, -2 monitors with heavy guns, 23 cruisers, -105 destroyers, 1,173 landing ships and craft of various types, 736 ancillary craft 864, merchant vessels, approximately 4,000 landing craft carried by larger ships, the 5 designated landing beaches, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, would each receive specific naval support. For Omaha Beach, where Richter's artillery battery maintained watch, The Naval Fire Support Group, designated Task Force O, included the battleships USS Texas and USS Arkansas, plus cruisers and destroyers. Allied planning had addressed every conceivable aspect of amphibious assault. The British had developed specialized armored vehicles called Hobart's Funnies after their creator, Major General Percy Hobart. These included Sherman DD tanks equipped with flotation screens, allowing them to swim ashore, Sherman crabs with chain flails to detonate mines, Churchill of VREs carrying demolition charges, and specialized bridging equipment. American forces would employ some of these vehicles, though less extensively than British and Canadian forces. The landing craft themselves represented a triumph of industrial production and design. The LCVP, or Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel, commonly called the Higgins boat after its designer Andrew Higgins, could carry 36 troops or a vehicle. Its shallow draft allowed beach landings, while its bow ramp permitted rapid egress under fire. American shipyards had produced more than 23,000 LCVPs by June 1944. Larger vessels included the LST, or Landing Ship Tank, capable of carrying 20 tanks or 60 vehicles. The LST's bow doors and ramp allowed vehicles to drive directly onto beaches. British and American shipyards had launched over 1,000 LSTs by D-Day. These ungainly vessels, cruising at less than 12 knots, required days to cross the channel but proved indispensable for landing heavy equipment. At his observation post overlooking the channel, Oberleutnant Richter had maintained watch through the pre-dawn hours of June 6th. Standard procedure required constant surveillance, though the rough seas of the previous day had made such vigilance seem routine rather than urgent. Visibility improved as dawn approached. The storm had passed, leaving broken clouds and a gradually lightening sky. At approximately 0530 hours, Richter began his systematic scan of the seaward horizon using 10 by 50 Zeiss binoculars, standard for German artillery observers. What he observed contradicted all expectations. Instead of empty gray water, the horizon showed a dark line that his experienced eye recognized as ships, not a patrol or convoy, but a formation of unprecedented scale. As visibility improved and more of the Allied fleet emerged from the morning haze, Richter attempted to count vessels before recognizing the futility of such efforts. German artillery observers received training in ship recognition, using silhouette charts to identify vessel types. Richter could distinguish battleships by their heavy superstructures and main gun turrets, cruisers by their lighter profiles, and destroyers by their smaller size and speed. What overwhelmed his training was not inability to identify ship types, but rather the sheer number of vessels extending across his field of view. Military historians have analyzed what German observers could actually see from shore on D-Day morning. The Allied fleet's formation stretched along a 60-mile front, with ships at varying distances from the coast. The main bombardment force positioned itself between 8 and 12 miles offshore, clearly visible in good conditions. Behind them, transport vessels and landing craft staged at distances up to 20 miles from shore. An observer at Richter's elevation, approximately 150 feet above sea level, had a theoretical horizon distance of 15 miles, though atmospheric conditions could extend or reduce visibility. Richter's initial attempt to report his observations revealed a critical problem in German command structure. His immediate superior, receiving reports of a few ships possibly approaching the coast, dismissed Richter's claims of thousands of vessels as exaggeration or panic. This response reflected the success of Allied deception operations. German commanders had been conditioned to expect the invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Reports of massive forces off Normandy contradicted this ingrained assumption, making them literally incredible. The field telephone system Richter used connected observation posts to battery command posts, which linked to regimental headquarters and higher command levels. This system worked adequately under normal conditions, but created delays during rapidly developing situations. Each command level required time to assess reports, consult with adjacent units, and request confirmation before acting. Meanwhile, the Allied fleet continued its approach. At 0550 hours, Allied battleships and cruisers commenced their preliminary bombardment of German coastal defenses. The naval fire plan had been developed through months of intelligence analysis, air reconnaissance photography, and careful study of beach gradients and defensive positions. The USS Texas, commissioned in 1914 and mounting 10 14-inch guns and 5 turrets, took position approximately 12 miles off Omaha Beach. Her fire control systems, upgraded with radar in 1941, allowed accurate shooting even in reduced visibility. Each 14-inch shell weighed 1,400 pounds and could penetrate several feet of reinforced concrete. Texas would fire 250 rounds of 14-inch ammunition during D-Day, targeting bunkers, gun positions, and suspected troop concentrations. The USS Arkansas, slightly smaller with 12 12-inch guns, engaged targets along the western edge of Omaha Beach. British cruisers HMS Glasgow and HMS Bellona added their 6-inch guns to the bombardment. Destroyers moved closer to shore, some positioning themselves within 2,000 yards of the beach to provide direct fire support. German defensive positions had been constructed to withstand bombing and shelling. Concrete casemates housing artillery pieces used walls 6 feet thick with overhead protection of similar dimensions. These structures could survive near misses from heavy naval shells, though direct hits could penetrate and destroy them. Trenches, communication lines, and personnel bunkers offered less protection against high explosive shells, but remained functional unless struck directly. The naval bombardment created immediate problems for German defenders. Communication trenches collapsed under shell impacts. Telephone lines severed. Dust and smoke reduced visibility. The psychological impact of sustained heavy shelling proved severe, even for experienced troops. Veterans of the Eastern Front had experienced Soviet artillery barrages, but the precision and weight of naval gunfire exceeded anything in their prior experience. From his observation post, Richter could see the muzzle flashes of Allied big guns, followed seconds later by the shriek of incoming shells and their impacts along the coastal defenses. His own battery, positioned inland and somewhat protected by terrain, initially escaped direct targeting. However, Allied fire planning designated all known German artillery positions for suppression or destruction, and Richter's battery would not remain untouched for long. The German defensive system at Omaha Beach represented years of engineering effort and tactical planning. Unlike the other D-Day landing zones, Omaha presented natural advantages for defenders. The beach stretched for 6 miles, backed by bluffs rising 100 to 170 feet. Only 5 small valleys, called draws, provided exits from the beach to higher ground. German planners had fortified these draws heavily, creating killing zones any advancing force would have to traverse. The 352nd Infantry Division had deployed along this sector in March 1944, replacing lighter coastal defense units. This division consisted of 3 infantry regiments, the 914th, 915th, and 916th. Each regiment comprised 3 battalions, though actual strengths varied. Total division strength numbered approximately 12,500 men, including artillery and support units. The 916th Infantry Regiment held the Omaha Beach sector specifically. Its defensive positions included -8 concrete bunkers with artillery or anti-tank guns, 35 pillboxes with machine guns or small caliber weapons, multiple mortar positions and protected emplacements, extensive trench networks connecting positions, wire obstacles, both above ground and underwater, minefields covering the beach, and draws. German doctrine emphasized interlocking fields of fire. Machine gun positions were sited so their beaten zones overlapped, ensuring no gaps through which attackers could advance without exposure. The MG-42 machine gun, capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute, provided the backbone of this defensive fire system. Artillery support for the 352nd Division included several batteries of 10.5 centimeters and 15 centimeters howitzers positioned inland, like Richter's battery, where they could range the beach and offshore approaches while remaining partially protected from naval gunfire. Additional weapons included 8.8 centimeters anti-aircraft guns in dual roles, effective against both aircraft and landing craft. Rommel had intensified defensive preparations during his tenure. He ordered the placement of obstacles below the high-water mark steel hedgehogs, wooden stakes, and steel Belgian gates, all designed to rip open landing craft or damage vehicles. Many obstacles carried mines or shells as explosive warheads. Rommel calculated that landing at high tide to avoid obstacles would expose troops to longer periods under defensive fire, while landing at low tide would force attackers to cross hundreds of yards of open beach. The first American assault wave at Omaha Beach comprised elements of the 1st Infantry Division and the 29th Infantry Division, with the 16th Infantry Regiment attacking the eastern sector and the 116th Infantry Regiment the western sector. H-hour, the designated landing time, was set for 0630 hours. The assault plan called for D.D. Sherman tanks to land first, providing covering fire as infantry landed behind them. However, sea conditions proved worse than anticipated. Of 32 DD tanks launched from landing craft in the eastern sector, 27 sank, their flotation screens inadequate for the choppy seas. Only 5 reached the beach. In the western sector, conditions appeared even worse, and the landing craft commander made the correct decision to land the tanks directly on the beach, rather than launch them at sea. The first infantry waves touched down within minutes of H-hour, though wind and current had pushed many landing craft east of their intended positions. As bow ramps dropped, German defensive fire opened immediately. Machine guns from the bluffs had perfectly registered fields of fire covering the entire beach. Artillery and mortar fire added to the carnage. Company A of the 116th Infantry Regiment landed directly in front of the strongest German positions at the draw near Vierville. Within 10 minutes, the company had suffered over 90% casualties. Company commanders and platoon leaders fell in the first minutes. Leaderless soldiers sought cover behind beach obstacles or the minimal shelter provided by the shingle bank. The situation across Omaha Beach in the first hour appeared catastrophic to observers offshore. Landing craft continued to deposit troops and equipment, but German fire prevented movement off the beach. Wounded men lay in the surf, destroyed vehicles burned. The carefully planned timetable had collapsed into chaos. Naval observers offshore recognized the crisis. At approximately 0730 hours, destroyers began moving closer to shore, some entering water shallow enough that they risked grounding. The destroyer USS McCook positioned herself only 1,000 yards from the beach, firing directly at German bunkers with her 5-inch guns. Other destroyers followed, providing close fire support that gradually suppressed some German positions. From Richter's observation post inland, the scene appeared differently. He could see American forces pinned down, taking heavy casualties. For a period, the defense appeared to be holding, vindicating the Atlantic Wall concept. However, the sheer volume of troops and equipment continuing to land indicated that this apparent success might prove temporary. Richter's artillery battery engaged the offshore fleet at approximately 0600 hours, after receiving clearance from higher command. The battery's 15 centimeters howitzers, with a maximum range of 13,000 meters, could reach the main bombardment ships, though targeting moving vessels at extreme range proved difficult. German artillery training emphasized indirect fire shooting at targets beyond visual range using coordinates provided by forward observers. However, engaging naval targets required different techniques. Ships moved, requiring continuous updates to firing solutions. Naval vessels' low profiles, especially when viewed bow on or stern on, made them difficult targets. Additionally, Shell splashes from near misses provided immediate feedback to naval gunners about the location of enemy batteries, inviting counter-battery fire. Richter's battery managed to score hits on the destroyer USS Corey at approximately 0633 hours. The Corey, a Fletcher-class destroyer, had closed to within 4,000 yards of the beach to engage German positions. Whether she struck a mine, was hit by shore battery fire, or both remains debated among historians. Contemporary reports indicate she suffered either 1 or 2 shell hits followed by a violent explosion, possibly from a mine. The ship developed a severe list and sank within 30 minutes, with casualties of 24 dead and 60 wounded. This success proved brief. Allied naval fire coordinators quickly identified the firing positions of Richter's battery through flash spotting and sound ranging. Counter-battery fire from cruisers and destroyers descended on the German position within minutes. The concrete casemates provided some protection, but near misses from 6-inch and 8-inch shells created concussion effects that injured crews and damaged equipment. By 0730 hours, one of Richter's guns had been knocked out by a direct hit. Communication lines to the battery command post had been severed multiple times, requiring runners to carry messages. The intensity of Allied counter-battery fire made movement above ground extremely hazardous. Allied air operations on D-Day demonstrated overwhelming numerical and operational superiority. The Allied Expeditionary Air Force, commanded by British Air Chief Marshal Sir Trafford Leigh-Mallory, conducted 14,674 sorties on June 6. These missions included fighter patrols, ground attack missions, transport operations, and reconnaissance flights. The Luftwaffe, by comparison, flew approximately 319 sorties over all of France on D-Day. This represented less than 2.5% of Allied sortie numbers. German fighter forces in France numbered approximately 570 aircraft, but serviceability rates, fuel shortages, and losses in transit reduced the number actually available for operations. Allied fighter umbrella over the invasion fleet consisted of continuous patrols by P-47 Thunderbolts, P-51 Mustangs, and RAF Spitfires. These fighters maintained station over the fleet in rotating shifts, ensuring that Allied ships and landing forces remained under constant air cover. Any German aircraft attempting to approach the invasion area faced immediate interception. Ground attack aircraft proved particularly effective against German positions and movement. RAF Typhoons, armed with rockets and bombs, attacked German strongpoints, vehicles, and suspected command posts. P-47 Thunderbolts performed similar missions, their 50 caliber machine guns lethal against unarmored vehicles and infantry positions. The strategic bombing campaign preceding D-Day had targeted French transportation networks, destroying bridges, rail yards, and road junctions. This transportation plan severely constrained German ability to move reinforcements toward Normandy. Any daylight movement of German troops or vehicles invited immediate air attack. Richter and his men would have seen Allied aircraft constantly overhead. The psychological impact of this air superiority cannot be overstated. Soldiers learned that movement during daylight invited attack. Reinforcement, resupply, and evacuation of wounded became possible only at night. The modern concept of air supremacy, complete control of the airspace, found its clearest expression over Normandy in June 1944. German armored doctrine emphasized immediate counterattack to defeat invasions before enemy forces consolidated. The 21st Panzer Division, stationed near Cannes, approximately 15 miles from the coast, represented the closest armored reserve to the landing beaches. This division numbered approximately 16,000 men and 127 tanks, primarily Panzer IV models with some captured French tanks. Orders to counterattack required authorization from OKW, the German Armed Forces High Command. Hitler, who often worked late into the night, was sleeping when initial invasion reports arrived. His staff hesitated to wake him. This delay, combined with confusion over whether Normandy represented the main invasion or a diversion, postponed the 21st Panzer Division's commitment until afternoon. When the division finally moved at approximately 1400 hours, it advanced without air cover directly into the teeth of Allied air superiority. RAF Typhoons and USAAF P-47s attacked the column repeatedly. Tank crews learned to watch the sky as closely as the ground ahead. Vehicles struck by rockets or bombs burned, blocking roads and forcing detours. What should have been a 3-hour movement to the coast stretched into a costly 6-hour ordeal. The division's attack, when it finally developed late on June 6th, achieved limited penetration between Juno and Sword beaches before withdrawing as darkness fell. This represented the only German armored counterattack on D-Day itself, and it accomplished nothing significant beyond demonstrating the futility of armored operations under hostile air supremacy. Additional panzer divisions existed elsewhere in France, but their commitment faced similar command authorization delays and movement difficulties. The Panzer Lehr Division, considered one of Germany's best-equipped armored formations, began moving toward Normandy from its position south of Paris on June 7th. Allied aircraft destroyed 84 vehicles from the division during its approach march. The division's commander reported that by the time his unit reached the front, it had lost approximately 40% of its combat effectiveness to air attack alone. This paralysis of German armored forces allowed Allied troops to consolidate their beachheads during the critical first days. By June 7th, American forces had linked Utah and Omaha beaches. British and Canadian forces had established a continuous front. The opportunity to defeat the invasion at the waterline had passed. The material imbalance. Richter recognized that morning reflected years of divergent industrial development and wartime production priorities. By 1944, the combined industrial output of the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union vastly exceeded Germany's capacity, even before accounting for strategic bombing effects. Tank production provides the clearest illustration. In 1944, American factories produced 29,497 tanks and self-propelled guns. British factories added 5,000 armored fighting vehicles. Soviet production topped 29,000 tanks and self-propelled guns. German production for the entire year reached only 18,956 armored fighting vehicles. And this figure included assault guns and tank destroyers, not just tanks. The Sherman tank, backbone of American armored forces, exemplified mass production principles. The M4A3 Sherman with 75mm gun required approximately 10,000 man-hours to construct. Its relatively simple design used standardized components that multiple factories could produce. By contrast, the German Tiger I required 300,000 man-hours to build. Its complex engineering and tight manufacturing tolerances meant only a few facilities could produce it, and in limited numbers. Germany produced approximately 1,347 Tiger I tanks during the entire war. The United States produced more Sherman tanks in a single month. June 1944 saw delivery of nearly 2,000 M4 South from American factories. This disparity meant that even though the Tiger's 88mm gun could destroy a Sherman at ranges where the Sherman's 75mm gun proved ineffective, the numerical advantage ensured Shermans would eventually prevail through attrition. Aircraft production showed similar imbalances. In 1944, American factories delivered 96,318 aircraft. Naval production demonstrated the most extreme disparity. The United States launched 2,654 merchant ships in 1944, totaling over 16 million tons. This output replaced losses from U-boat attacks while simultaneously expanding the overall merchant fleet. American shipyards delivered dozens of escort carriers, hundreds of destroyers and destroyer escorts, and over 1,000 landing ships and craft. Germany's surface navy had effectively ceased to exist as an offensive force by 1944. Its capital ships confined to Norwegian fjords or sunk. The crisis at Omaha Beach began resolving around 0900 hours through a combination of naval gunfire support, individual leadership, and the gradual attrition of German defensive positions. Small groups of American soldiers, often led by surviving junior officers or NCOs, began moving off the beach and attacking German positions from the flanks. Brigadier General Norman Coda, Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Infantry Division, landed at approximately 0730 hours and immediately began organizing soldiers from various units into assault groups. His famous exhortation variants of, "There are only two kinds of people on this beach, the dead and those about to die. Let's get the hell out of here," captured the desperation of the situation. Rangers from the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions, landing west of the main Omaha Beach sector, scaled the cliffs at Point du Hoc despite heavy casualties. Their mission destroying a German artillery battery found the gun positions empty, the weapons having been moved inland. However, the Rangers' presence on the clifftops threatened German positions from an unexpected direction. Bangalore torpedoes' explosive charges on long poles cleared paths through wire obstacles. Engineers cleared mines and obstacles under fire. Slowly, painfully, American infantry infiltrated through gaps in the German defensive line. Once small groups reached the base of the bluffs, they found dead ground where German positions on the heights could not depress their fire enough to engage them. By 1100 hours, American forces had secured 4 of the 5 draws leading off Omaha Beach. Tanks and artillery pieces began moving inland. Destroyers continued providing fire support, their accuracy improving as forward observers ashore called targets. The German defense, initially effective, began fragmenting as positions were isolated and destroyed individually. From Richter's perspective inland, the morning's apparent defensive success had transformed into a deteriorating situation by afternoon. Radio communications, sporadic at best, brought reports of Allied forces advancing inland. His own battery remained under near-constant counter-battery fire. Ammunition supplies, dependent on horse-drawn transport vulnerable to air attack, began running low. The 352nd Infantry Division suffered devastating losses on June 6th. Precise casualty figures remained disputed, as unit records were destroyed or lost during the subsequent retreat. More significantly, these casualties concentrated in the units directly engaged along Omaha Beach. Some companies suffered 70 to 80% losses. The 916th Infantry Regiment, holding the primary defensive positions, essentially ceased to exist as a cohesive unit by June 7th. Survivors retreated inland, regrouping with other fragmentary units into improvised battle groups. German casualty categories included killed, wounded, missing, and captured. Many missing had been killed but their bodies not recovered. Others had been cut off in isolated positions and would subsequently surrender. Wounded posed particular problems, as evacuation routes came under air attack and medical facilities proved overwhelmed. American casualties at Omaha Beach numbered approximately 2,400 on June 6th, including roughly 430 killed. These figures, while substantial, represented acceptable losses for the objectives achieved. The 5th Corps, responsible for Omaha Beach, had landed approximately 34,000 troops by nightfall. Despite the high casualty rate during the initial assault, the beachhead had been secured. Casualty ratios between attacker and defender reversed the usual military arithmetic. Defensive positions normally inflict higher casualties on attackers than defenders suffer. At Omaha Beach on D-Day, the German advantage in position and firepower was overcome by Allied advantages in naval gunfire support, air superiority, and the simple ability to continuously feed reinforcements into the battle. The days following June 6th saw an extraordinary logistical operation. The Allies had planned for the rapid buildup of forces in Normandy, Understanding that the battle's outcome depended on accumulating combat power faster than the Germans could reinforce. 2 artificial harbors, codenamed Mulberries, had been constructed in sections in England and towed across the Channel. Mulberry A off Omaha Beach and Mulberry B off Gold Beach would allow direct unloading of cargo ships without requiring port facilities. Additionally, PLUTO pipeline under the ocean would eventually pump fuel directly from England to France. By June 11th, 5 days after D-Day, the Allies had landed 326,547 troops, 54,186 vehicles, and 104,428 tons of supplies. The initial assault force of 156,000 men had more than doubled. This flow of men and material continued regardless of weather, though a major storm on June 19th to 22nd temporarily disrupted operations and destroyed the American Mulberry Harbor. German reinforcement efforts paled by comparison. The 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, stationed near Paris, required 3 days to reach the front, a distance of approximately 120 miles, due to air attacks and demolished bridges. The division arrived piecemeal and was immediately committed to combat without opportunity for reconnaissance or planning. Other divisions faced similar difficulties. Allied logistical planning had anticipated requirements for ammunition, fuel, food, medical supplies, and replacement equipment. Ammunition consumption rates, based on experiences in North Africa and Italy, proved reasonably accurate. Fuel demands increased as more vehicles came ashore. Medical facilities expanded from beach aid stations to field hospitals within days. The Liberty ships mass-produced cargo vessels built in American shipyards proved essential to this logistics effort. These ships, constructed in an average of 42 days, brought supplies from American ports to England and then to France. The production rate of 50 ships per month in 1944 ensured continuous availability of transport capacity. The Normandy campaign would continue for another 2 months after D-Day, with the breakout from the beachhead not achieved until late July. However, the strategic outcome was determined by June 7th. The Allies had established themselves ashore in sufficient strength that dislodging them became impossible given German resources and Allied air superiority. German strategy after June 6th devolved into positional defense, attempting to contain the Allied beachhead while higher command debated options. Hitler, convinced that Normandy remained a diversion and the main invasion would still come at Pas-de-Calais, initially refused to transfer the 15th Army from that sector. This decision left German forces in Normandy consistently outnumbered. Field Marshal Rommel advocated for withdrawal to more defensible positions inland, beyond the range of naval gunfire. This would have shortened German supply lines while lengthening Allied ones. However, Hitler's no-retreat doctrine forbade such withdrawals, instead demanding that every position be held to the last. This strategy ensured that when positions were eventually overrun, defending units suffered complete destruction rather than conducting organized withdrawals. The Battle of the Hedgerows in June and July demonstrated both the difficulties of attacking through Normandy's bocage terrain and the ultimate futility of German defensive efforts. American casualties mounted in small unit actions as troops learned to fight in enclosed fields surrounded by thick hedgerows. However, American units could be reinforced and resupplied continuously. German units eroded through attrition without replacement. Operation Cobra, the American breakout from the Normandy beachhead launched on July 25th, employed over 2,400 Allied aircraft in carpet-bombing German positions prior to the ground assault. This level of air support had no equivalent in German capabilities. When American armor broke through weakened defenses, German forces lacked the mobility to reform defensive lines or the reserves to counterattack effectively. By late August, the Falaise Pocket trapped remnants of German forces in Normandy. Estimates suggest 80,000 to 100,000 German troops were killed or captured. The German army in France had been destroyed as an effective fighting force. Paris was liberated on August 25th. Allied forces reached the German border by September. The Normandy campaign's outcome reflected fundamental shifts in warfare that had been developing since World War I but reached full expression by 1944. The integration of air power, mechanization, industrial production, and logistics created a form of warfare where material resources determined outcomes as much as tactical skill or operational planning. German military tradition emphasized maneuver, tactical excellence, and the skill of individual commanders. The Wehrmacht's successes from 1939 to 1941 validated this approach. However, by 1944, Germany faced enemies, particularly the United States, whose military doctrine emphasized material superiority and systematic methods. American military planning assumed that sufficient resources, properly applied, could overcome any defensive position or defeat any enemy force. The contrast between German and Allied approaches to tank design illustrates this difference. German tanks like the Tiger and Panther were technologically superior individually. The Tiger's 88mm gun could destroy any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. Its armor protection made it nearly invulnerable to frontal attack by most Allied anti-tank weapons. However, this superiority came at immense cost in production complexity and maintenance requirements. A Tiger tank required approximately 300,000 man-hours to construct, needed specialized tools and trained mechanics for maintenance, consumed enormous quantities of fuel, and suffered frequent mechanical breakdowns when operating at high speeds or across rough terrain. Germany produced fewer than 1,400 Tigers during the entire war. The American Sherman tank, by contrast, was mechanically reliable, easy to maintain, required only 10,000 man-hours to construct, and could be produced by the thousands. While inferior individually to German heavy tanks, Shermans could be produced, shipped, and fielded in numbers that ensured numerical superiority in virtually every engagement. Allied commanders accepted that 3 or 4 Shermans might be lost to destroy a single Tiger, because those 3 or 4 could be replaced within weeks, while the Tiger could not. This industrial calculus extended beyond tanks to every category of military equipment. Allied air forces accepted aircraft losses in missions, knowing replacement aircraft and trained pilots were available. German forces husbanded resources because losses could not be replaced. Allied naval forces expended ammunition freely, while German artillery batteries rationed shells. Historical records contain numerous German officer accounts of D-Day, though Oberleutnant Klaus Richter's specific identity and detailed experiences may represent a composite drawn from multiple sources. However, the perspective described an artillery officer's recognition of overwhelming Allied material superiority appears consistently in German accounts from Normandy. General Gunther Blumentritt, Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt, later testified that reports of the invasion's scale initially seemed incredible. The number of ships reported exceeded German intelligence estimates by such margins that higher command assumed observers were exaggerating or panicking. This disbelief delayed German responses during critical hours. Major Werner Plusket of the 352nd Artillery Regiment left a well-documented account of observing the invasion fleet from his command post near Omaha Beach. His description of attempting to convince superiors that thousands of ships were approaching mirrors the pattern described in many accounts initial reports dismissed. Then grudging acknowledgement as reports from multiple sources confirmed the fleet's scale. General Wilhelm Richter, commander of the 716th Infantry Division, different from the Oberleutnant Richter in our account, defending the eastern landing beaches, reported complete disruption of communications and command structures within hours of the assault beginning. His division, composed largely of older reservists and conscripts, suffered over 70% casualties within 2 days. These accounts share common themes. The shock of the fleet's size, the effectiveness and volume of naval gunfire, the complete absence of Luftwaffe support, and the gradual realization that defensive success in isolated engagements meant nothing when the Allies could continuously reinforce and resupply their forces while German units received no support. Junior officers and NCOs often displayed greater realism about the military situation than senior commanders. Reports filtered through command channels tended to minimize problems and emphasize successes, creating distorted pictures at higher headquarters. This information filtering meant that Hitler's headquarters in particular operated with dangerously optimistic assessments until reality became undeniable.